The first vehicle I look at is Volvo XC90, so it's a high-end SUV. Overall pretty classy vehicle, nice to drive, looks good, and if you were to buy a new one right now, you can certainly upgrade it and spend well over $100,000 for one, but kind of a mid-range Volvo XC90 is going to be about $95,800 is where it stands right now. I'll also mention that the last few years has been a bit of an anomaly with vehicles because inflation has driven up the value. So there's been lots of people that have actually purchased a brand new vehicle, sold it a year and a half later for more money than they purchased it for as a result of inflation as well as supply chain issues. I've taken those numbers out and I've actually really kind of ignored some of those, the impacts of the last few years and given a more historical breakdown of what vehicles are, because I think if we're not fully back there right now, we're going to get back to something more in line with that. So if you look at the 3-year value, or what you could sell it for, in red there, it's basically half price. So in the first 3 years of the vehicle is cut in half in terms of the value. And I've broken it down between a couple of different vehicle ranges. So that's the higher end one, a Buick Enclave. It's kind of like, I guess it's a high-end Buick, but it's still a Buick. So, but that would be, you're looking around $70,000. And this one actually dropped by $31,000. So not quite half, but just a little bit over half. So the trend that you see, and even if we go down to, and I picked a vehicle with a reputation for not losing value, which is the Toyota Camry, $41,000 to get a, decked out Camry, I guess, as much as a Camry can be decked out. So it just to show that even a Camry still loses a lot of value. It's a little under half, but it's still really, if you look at most vehicles at a 3-year time period, you've lost half the value of that vehicle. So I put it's pretty hard to put all the numbers in the same spreadsheet, so I'm just going to give you the breakdown of the average of all three of those. So I put the average all together, and the average works out to about $68,000. The average depreciation is $31,000 in that first 3 years. And so give me these things numbers on the end. Well, actually, we drive them from the side. So it's basically a $10,000 annual cost if you take that first 3 years. If you take the second 3 years, so buy a 3-year-old vehicle and sell it when it's 6 years old, it only costs you $4,800 to drive that car for a year. So here's the average. So using the above those numbers, an average of all three of those, buying a 3-year-old vehicle or compared to buying a brand new vehicle and driving it for 3 years, the difference in cost works out to about $5,500 per year. And then I've actually put that back in at an annual rate of 12%. So for real estate investors, that's a reasonable rate of return. And I've also actually annually taken 40% off of that return, which in real estate, as we know, especially if we're buying to hold, we don't sell our properties every year. If we're using a burst strategy or buying and holding, we're refinancing, pulling the money out, reinvesting it, but we're not actually spending it. So in reality, that number would be almost $1.5 million if you were to not sell anything. That's what that number would be at. There'd be a liability in there, but that would get us up closer to about $900,000, and that's over a 30-year period. So if you just buy a 3-year-old vehicle and sell it every 3 years instead of a brand new vehicle and sell it after 3 years, that's the difference over a 30-year timeline is between $700,000 or about $850,000 in terms of the difference after taxes. So you can kind of imagine how that could have you retire 10 years earlier, just have you retire living a lot nicer, whether that's 25 to 55 or 30 to 60 years old. So I broke it out a little differently as well. So I actually took buying a brand new, because a lot of people say, well, I'll buy a brand new vehicle, then I drive it for a full 5 years. And so I actually did buying a 2-year-old vehicle and selling it every 2 years. And I assumed it would work out to about the same. So in the case of buying a 2-year-old vehicle and selling it for every 2 years, the oldest vehicle you're ever going to drive is actually 4 years old versus 5 in the other scenario. And it works out that even though you're doing it that way, you're still actually saving $2,300 a year. It's 40 years old when you sell it, so you're still under warranty. So you have really no negative impacts to that except the new car smell. But that's still $240,000, or it works out to, I think it was about $440,000 if I don't annually tax it. So if you get a high return of 12%, but as an active real estate investor, we should be able to make at least that. And again, we wouldn't necessarily be annually paying taxes like a typical stock market return or interest return. So this is the one that I like the most because this is the comparison I did for myself when I bought a vehicle. And if you look at comparing a very high-end vehicle, like a Volvo XC90 or an Acura MDX or a Mercedes or BMW, and that kind of 100,000 price range new, and you buy that 3 years old, you're actually significantly better off than if you buy a brand new lower to mid-range vehicle. So when I was looking 10 years ago when I first did this, I was thinking, I'm just gonna go buy like a Ford Escape or something simple that was like in a mid-range vehicle to be super responsible, save as much money as I could. And then just for kicks, I went and test drove a 3-year-old XC90. And it was anything I drove after that sucked. Like a Ford Escape, doesn't matter if it's new, even a mid-range vehicle just didn't compare to the higher-end vehicle, even though it was newer. So the idea is that if you drive, I mean, think about the value. If you've ever actually done it, like take the time to do it. If you're searching for a vehicle, go out and test drive a 3-year-old high-end vehicle, and then go test drive the brand new ones that you were considering buying, and see the comparison between how they drive. There's just no comparison. And again, you're still going to sell it at 6 years, so you're still not taking. You're still not driving a super old vehicle. You're not being super cheap and driving around in a junker. You don't rust on your vehicle. You're still driving a high-end vehicle. It's nicer to drive. But on top of it, you still end up with $500,000 at the end of that 30-year cycle by driving a nicer vehicle instead of assuming you're being responsible by buying a mid-range vehicle or a lower-end vehicle brand new every 5 years. And that's, pretty simple numbers, but it actually works out to a pretty significant return over years. You retire 10 years earlier by not driving a brand new vehicle, but actually driving a nicer vehicle. Yeah, the justifications for why people will buy new vehicles is they all say, well, you get a better interest rate, and you do. But if you're paying, twice the amount for the money, you're actually not paying more interest. You're just paying a lower interest rate and twice the amount of money. So the interest actually doesn't make that much of a difference. The second one is that your accountant says, oh, it's just lease, it's easier to write off. And if your accountant ever tells you that, you should fire your accountant unless they have a really specific reason. Because if they just say it's easier to write off, it's true. It's because 100% of a lease is an expense. That's like your accountant telling you to go pay more money for all your supplies and expenses because then you can write more off. Like, it doesn't make any sense. A lease is basically go to Enterprise and just rent a vehicle, because that's essentially what a lease works out to on average. Sometimes you pay a little bit, sometimes you get a little bit back, but largely you just turn your vehicle back over after leasing it. It's every penny of your payment is an expense versus a car payment where half of it is paying off the vehicle. The warranty, there's some benefit to that, but at $5,000 a year worth of savings, unless an engine goes, which I can't even recall the last time I've known anyone that has had an engine go in a vehicle that's within the last decade. So it's pretty insignificant and is largely made up for by the savings.
Yeah, so we'll change gears and talk about a bit of a different way you can kind of limit your expenses for car ownership. So like I mentioned, I like cars. So the thought of buying, an older car that's kind of not that exciting doesn't really excite me too much. But I'm a real estate investor and I hate spending money, right? So I don't want to I don't want to spend all my money on fancy cars. So what I'll talk about is kind of like there's a way you can buy the cars you want without it being expensive. And there's a few reasons why I buy the cars that I'll show, is that I can also keep my insurance lower, because there's insurance hack around that as well. So this is just a chart of some really rare fancy cars that probably no one in the room has the money to buy, because they're very expensive, but it just displays that car can actually appreciate in value. They're still horrible investment, so it's still not something you should do. You should buy real estate over buying cars. However, it does show that they can actually appreciate in value, not just appreciate if you're buying the right cars, right? Obviously, none of these are really practical to buy, or they're for rich people essentially. But I'll show you how to do this with much more affordable cars. So again, like I was saying, you need to buy a car that's fairly unique, where there's not a whole lot of production of it, or you need to buy it at least 10 years old and get a really good deal on it. Don't buy from a dealership. If you think you're getting a good deal from the dealership, you're not. Like, you need to make money, right? You need a profit margin. So get a good deal from a private sale. Ideally qualifies for a specialty car insurance. So that's something I'll talk about. There's certain cars you can insure as collector cars, even if they're not like 20 years old, right? 30 years old. You can save significantly from that. And you can still buy practical cars. Like, there's wagons you can buy that are pretty rare. There's some pickup trucks, there's like some rare SUVs. So it doesn't have to be a sports car, it doesn't have to be an exotic car, something like that. You can still buy something reliable, right? Like, it could be a Toyota, it could be like, it doesn't have to be like Lamborghini or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll talk about some of the cars I've had. And the reason why is I know a lot of you here will tell me like, oh, you got lucky. Well, this is a repeatable process that I've done over and over and over the last 10 years, right? So it works, and you can do it over and over if you're buying the right cars. So that was my first car purchase ever when I moved to Alberta. Nothing super expensive, and it was not like a rare car or anything like that, because it was cheap. And the reason why I bought this is I looked at the depreciation of other Mustangs, and I realized that they kind of bottomed down to around 10 grand. Like, no matter if it was like, at the time, like a 1995 or 1990, it was still selling for 10 grand if it had a V8 engine. So I was like, oh, if I buy it for 10 grand, it's going to stay 10 grand while I own it, right? And that's exactly what happened. I kept the car for 4 years. I spent very little on repairs, being pretty reliable, and I sold it for $9,500. So it lost $1,000 in 4 years of ownership, right? So almost free. My insurance was pretty expensive. That was mainly because I was a new driver in Alberta. I had just moved here. I was 19 years old, so we'll talk about the insurance hack later, but that was not one of them. Next, I bought a Japanese imported car, Subaru WRX STI, which fairly rare in Canada. And again, at that price, I kind of knew it was the bottom. Like, that's why I have to look for cars that the one in really good shape and the one in really crappy shape or older sell for the same price. It kind of gives you an idea that it's not going to go even lower. And what's interesting in this car is the engine actually ended up being completely toast by the end of it. It had run out, which essentially is a whole new engine, which I disposed at the sale, and I still sold it for the price I paid for it. So it was essentially a free car for the year, roughly, that I owned it. Then I bought another Mustang, and this one's a little different because it was a much newer car. It still had a warranty, right? I bought it in 2015. It was a 2013 car, so I think it had a 1.5 year warranty left. But it was a really good deal, right? And I kept the car for a few years, sold it for $2 grand less, right? So again, very cheap car to have, and I drove like 80,000 clicks on that car. So all under warranty. Then I bought a BMW. And I bought a very rare model, like the ZHB are very rare, so that's one of the instance of cars that, like I think it was like 10 and up or something like that. And I actually ended up making money on that car. So that's the first car where I actually appreciated. So bought the car for $7,500, sold it for $9,500. It did nothing to it, right? Just drove it. Then I bought another Subaru, and this one, the engine actually entirely blew up, and then I had to put a whole new one in. And again, still cost me nothing. because the car appreciated in value in the time I owned it. This one was an even more rare version than the Japanese one that you usually get. So very few are available. These cars are worth over 20 grand now. If I kept it, it would have kept appreciating. So another free car, right? This one I put in here as an example of what not to do. I bought this car from the dealership. The only car in my life I ever didn't buy from a private sale. Again, the dealership's not there to give you a good deal, right? So I bought a car for 30 grand and sold it for 20 grand like 2 years later. So that car did cost me money. It actually cost me more money than all my other cars combined in the entire time I've had cars in just one car, right? And that's more like the typical scenario I kind of talked about, like cars depreciate in value. Then I bought a Corvette, and this is when I discovered insurance hacks. So this car, because there's not a whole lot of Z06 and it's a bit older, it classifies for collector car insurance. And the rationale behind those type of insurance is people that own these type of cars take care of them, they store them inside, they don't drive them when it rains, they don't drive them when it's crappy for the most part, right? And also they don't get stolen a lot. Because who's going to steal like a yellow Corvette, right? It's easy to find. So they'll go and steal an F-150 or Civic or something like that. So this car ended up costing $220 a year in insurance. Not a month, a year, with full coverage, $100 deductible, and insane customer service. So after that car was sold, I was like, just the saving in insurance alone is like almost a car payment for a more expensive car, right? Because normally I would pay like, over $1,000 a year, so it'd be an extra $100 a month just in insurance. Spent nothing in repairs, and that's another one that when I bought it, I saw that model of Corvettes, they were on the way up, and they were appreciating every year. So I ended up doing a trade actually for another car at a $27,000 valuation. So that car ended up making me $7 grand. So, and again, I'd rather drive that than a Civic. So that's the car I traded for, which was also a pretty rare car as well. Imported from Japan, German car. And that car, didn't drive it too long. I honestly didn't really like the car too much, but it was a really good trade. So I kept the car for a little while. Again, insurance hack, classified for collector car insurance because there's not a lot of them. This one was a bit more expensive, $350 a year, which is still dirt cheap for full coverage, right? So yeah, kept that car for a bit for free. And that's my current car. I bought a BMW M5. Obviously, I don't know how it's going to turn out because I just bought it. But I also bought it because it classifies for collector car insurance. Any other BMW wouldn't, if there were not like an M model. Like if you buy like a 550i or something like that, they're not going to insure that for collector car insurance, right? But because it's an M model, like M4 would qualify, M3, things like that, and it's a little older, they put that on their collector car insurance. So this one's a bit more expensive to insure because it's a more expensive car overall, but again, it's still cheaper. I mean, my girlfriend's Civic is 3 times the price to insure. So yeah, and then Santhosh will come talk about a bit of a different aspect of it.
Actually, you know
so
what?
I
I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
How do you know whether it qualifies for the insurances or a list, or do you have to call the
That's a really
insurance?
good question. You do have to call because it's a very case-by-case basis. If you know cars a lot, you might have a pretty good idea, just from the cars that are more rare in general. But call first, right? You can call them up. There's like Haggerty that does this, Oldest Gold. There's a few insurance companies that do these type of cars. Just be like, yeah, I'm planning to buy this car, is it going to qualify? And one thing to know is they consider the person as well. So once you develop a relationship with them, they will be a lot more willing to consider other cars. For example, the M5 that I bought, this is one where it was kind of on the edge for them because it's a newer car, a bit more expensive. And if I didn't have other cars insured with them in the past, I don't think they would have actually done this one. But I had a history of insuring, like the Volkswagen, the Corvette, and everything. Yeah, we'll talk to you anyway.
And is that if it turns out to be one of those cars, is that a good indicator? You said age is one of them, at least 10 years old. is that another indicator that it might be fit your strategy? Just the
Yeah,
fact
exactly.
that
It's a really good indicator. It's going to at least likely not depreciate in value and very likely appreciate in value, right? If the car qualifies for collector car insurance, it means people actually want to collect these cars, right? So that's a really good sign.
All right, so from a BMW, we moved to a more mainstream car. So, yeah, this is my original Nissan Altima from 2009 that I used to have. And see the purchase price, $6,500. And at the time, comparable cars were going for about $7,500. So you're probably wondering how I got this deal, right? Go to an auction. And essentially try your luck. And there wasn't many bids on this particular car when it came into the auction ring. And so essentially I threw in an offer for that price and I got it. There was no issues with it. For those who've never been to an auction, at least the one in Calgary, Regal Auctions is where I got this from. You can actually go the day before the auction, get the keys, check out the car, check out the cars you're interested in. So that way you know there's no major mechanical issues, right? So that's how I picked up this car. That's my insurance cost. I think that's pretty typical these days. And then I sold it for $9,800. Well, I didn't actually sell it. Insurance paid me $9,800 for the car because in 2018 there was a huge hailstorm in the Northeast, right? So my car was sitting on the driveway and it got completely obliterated. The hail went right through the windshield and the car was basically soaked inside, right? So the fair market value at the time for that car was $9,800 according to insurance. So after a little bit of haggling with insurance, they said, fine, we'll pay you $9,800, which means now I actually made $3,300, right? So the next one, very unconventional. So I ended up buying a minivan for my next vehicle, right? Most people wouldn't expect a rather young guy like me to be driving around in a minivan. I know Layne didn't. And the reason why I got a minivan is, I liked going camping, I liked going out to the mountains. I had a dog, I had my partner as well. I wanted something that was cheap on gas, that I could drive in the mountains, I could camp in the vehicle, right? So I built this bed setup here. You can see the lower picture. It's just a plywood base and sub legs for support. And I essentially converted the van into a camper van whenever I needed to go for trips, right? And it also dual purposed. I could use this vehicle for rentals as well. Did you know that it could fit 2 sheets of drywall and you can close the tailgate thing? So it's a very practical vehicle. Not the coolest vehicle, but it's certainly very practical, right? And of course it was a nicer vehicle than what I previously had. And I bought it for $6,900, and again, this was at the auction. Again, a really cheap price considering it had pretty low kilometers at the time. And the reason because it had a little ding by the wheel well, by the wheel arch right over there, but it was barely noticeable, right? But of course, if there's damage, people are worried. I went ahead and bought it, right? So I put the vehicle, whenever I wasn't using the vehicle, I was like, you know what, this is kind of cool. I was looking at RV websites, how much comparable RVs go for, and they were like $300-400 a night, right, for a motorhome. And I put this on Turo for back then, a little over $100 as a camper conversion, as a cheaper alternative, and it was booked solid, right? So in that one summer, I essentially paid off the vehicle in bookings. I made all my money back, right? And then after that, the vehicle was essentially free. Right? So the purchase price was $69,000, and then a few years later, sold it for $3,400. Right? So technically, I lost minus $3,500, but I made $6,900. Right? And then $6,000. Oh wait, yeah, that was my purchase price, and then $6,000 from Turo. So I made approximately $9,400 of this vehicle. So after that vehicle, I had to repeat the model, right? I ran the other one into the ground, and it was high mileage, so I sold that. So I bought this one. It's a 2012 Caravan, right? I still have this vehicle. And I went back to putting it on Turo this year, again, as a camper conversion. This van will be fully paid off this summer. I just listed the property, listed the van a couple of months ago. And I bought this for exactly $10,000 in 2021. And today, I was just looking today morning for prices of this vehicle. It's about $14,000 for the same mileage because cars have obviously gone up in value over the last few years. But you can see over there, my earnings so far, I only had 2 bookings and I got $472. But across, like over the course of the summer, I'm expected to make $5,000 and I'm about 35% booked in terms of like occupancy, if that makes sense. So you can see how this can be a lucrative kind of side hustle without you having to be an Uber driver or skip the dishes. Like you just hand them the car and they do whatever they want, right? Turo is just a car sharing platform. It's just like the Airbnb for cars. So you could, I think it's available in most parts of North America. So you could go and rent out. Yeah, go ahead.
How does listing in Ontario affect your insurance at all?
Listing on Turo doesn't affect your insurance by much. Mine went up about $150 per year. But the app provides, like using the platform, they take 25% of your gross earnings because it's, they provide insurance and it's full coverage. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just a quick one. So what are you renting that for 24 hours?
Right now, this is listed for $140 a night. And it's pretty popular because if you go to any rental company today and you look for a caravan, they're either booked out or they're way more expensive. Right? Essentially, by doing this, I undercut the competition, right? And it's a 2012, so my depreciation is not going to be much, right? One thing to note is if you're considering putting your car in Turo, be strategic about what vehicle you're putting, right? Don't put your brand new 2021 because you have the depreciation as well, right? And you don't even get to use your new vehicle. So the Turo's rules is that your vehicle can't be older than 10 years, and this barely met the cutoff, right? So if it was next year, I can't list this van on Turo.
If I'm right though, once you have it on the platform, as long as you maintain it, you can extend that timeline.
Exactly. So once the property's listed, it could be on there for as long as you want, right? So even if you're past their threshold, you're good. But yeah, that's essentially a cheap way to make some extra cash.